It was just before 9 this morning, of course, we got the news that a police officer had been shot dead in Croydon. This was never going to be easy to digest. It's a rarity in this country, but the stats for those killed in the line of duty are still shocking. Today, another name is added to that list. And of course, as you will be aware, to compound the shock, this happened in a custody suite at a police station. Look, we can't second guess yet what might have happened. What we all know is that this is absolutely horrific. We'll get more details throughout the afternoon, I'm sure. But it's absolutely right that we react to this. I want to react to this. We should feel a sense of grief. This is shocking. It's often said that when a police officer leaves for work, they have no idea by nature of the job whether they're going to return home later. Today, one officer won't be returning home. A bereaved family, an utterly devastated group of colleagues, a police service in shock, and a country, not just a region, but a country that sees the loss of another brave police officer. The police make us safe. The police take risks so that you and I don't have to. The police run into trouble while the rest of us run away. The police lay their lives on the line. This officer was doing their job. And of course, it comes at a time when the police are under enormous pressure, almost like never before. I can't really think of a time when I've seen this sort of pressure on the police. And I'm including all those years of austerity when they were hugely short on numbers. They are still down on numbers while crime is on the rise, particularly violent crime on the rise, knife crime out of control, gun crime on the rise, violence just a way of life in some areas. The police are the ones at the coalface of all of this. The police are the ones who deal with this mess. And of course, it can't be ignored. No, in fact, scrap that. It should never be ignored, of the kind of vile abuse that they've had to endure in recent months, the likes of which, again, I never thought I would see. I never thought I would see people being given a platform to discuss defunding the police, compromising the role of the police. Organisations like Black Lives Matter have made the police job far harder than it needed to be. They have to take a responsibility for the kind of skewed view that many have formed recently of our police. They've made the job more dangerous. They've created a narrative. They've given a green light to abuse, ignore, disrespect our police officers. And yet C-list celebrities will go on national TV and wear a necklace celebrating the very organisation that has led to much of this abuse. That person is not alone, by the way. Politicians play the same game. Shame on these charlatans. I do want to get your reaction on this. I've no idea, by the way, in what form our conversation this afternoon will take. But I just sense we should open up the lines and see what happens here. 0344 499 1000, particularly if you are part of the police family. I mentioned sons and daughters, mums and dads, former cops, people who know personally at first hand the kind of risks and what that feels like, and just that sense of never knowing. You get a 999 call come through, you stick your blue lights on, and away you go. You do not know what is waiting for you there. You have no idea what might be waiting for you there. So I'd like to gauge that view, if you do or have done this job. 0344 499 1000. And to the families of officers as well. I would also say this, because when that news breaks, as you heard in our news at 1 o'clock with Charlotte, that an officer has been killed, there's not a relative of a police officer who for those few moments doesn't hold their breath and think, is it? Could it be? 0344 499 1000. In the last few minutes, we have heard from the Home Secretary. Priti Patel said this.
All our thoughts are with the officers' family, friends and colleagues across the Metropolitan Police force, but also police and family across the country. This is a sad day for our country, as once again we see the tragic killing of a police officer in the line of duty.
We'll have more statements throughout the course of the afternoon. We did hear as well from the Police Minister, Kit Morthouse, who earlier spoke to the House of Commons.
The details are still emerging, but the Home Secretary has spoken to the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police and offered the help and support of the Home Office as the force comforts family, friend and colleagues and investigates this crime. We ask our police officers to do an extraordinary job. The fact that one of them has fallen in the line of performing that duty is a tragedy for the entire nation. I know the entire House will offer their condolences to his family and friends and colleagues.
Indeed. And we'll take your response to this. I don't know specifically what the response is. I'm angered by the sense of lawlessness that seems to have overtaken our country in the last couple of years. I'm angered by the disrespect for police officers that we've seen in the last few years, but culminating really in the last few months as well, and we partly know why. And I'm angered at the futility of an officer on duty out there protecting us, whose life ends in a custody suite after being shot dead. That should not just upset us, it should anger us. We should be hugely and deeply perturbed by today's events. It is symbolic beyond the single incident. It goes out and into the entire discussion about those that help us, those that serve their communities, the role, the lack of assistance some of them feel. This really does touch into so many facets of everyday life that you are never forced to really think about until you realise. You see a copper go down the road, you might say hello, you might just acknowledge it. You see a police car, you might have a look. You don't really think that the ultimate nature of that job is what happened today in Croydon. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk to Alex Dibble in a few moments, Talk Radio's correspondent in Croydon. David Spencer is with us, our news editor. Afternoon to you, David. I know details are sketchy, but just talk us through what we know so far.
So this shooting happened at 2:15 this morning in this custody centre in South London, in Croydon. Police said immediately that there was no police firearm involved, which you then work out, if it's not a police weapon, it was a weapon that the suspect would have had, as we understood it. That suspect used the weapon on themselves and they are critically ill in hospital. A murder investigation has been launched. Alongside that, because this is a police incident and one that raises some serious questions, the IOPC, so the Independent Office for Police Conduct, is investigating, and officers are on the scene in South Croydon from that team alongside the murder investigation team to try and establish what happened and how what happened. I mean, the questions are numerous from this, as we've heard over the last few hours on Talk Radio, the reaction from former officers, from politicians about what questions need to be asked. The context to this, Ian, to say about officers shot in the line of duty for the Metropolitan Police, the official figures suggest this is only the 17th officer to have died through a firearm since the Second World War. But it does raise serious questions, and just the wider context that we're looking at here, considering that last August we had the tragic death of Andrew Harper, the police officer dragged to his death so awfully in West Berkshire. And we've seen his widow since the Old Bailey case, where the people held responsible were found guilty of manslaughter and given sentences that have raised huge questions about whether those sentences were stringent enough. I mean, they're appealing whether those sentences were too severe, but we know that the sentencing is being reviewed. Lissy Harper, Andrew Harper's widow, has been campaigning for much stiffer sentences and mandatory sentences relating to police officers, emergency workers who are attacked in the line of duty, killed in the line of duty. And that's the wider context to what we've heard happen in South London today so tragically.
Indeed. We just played that clip of the Home Secretary David, speaking just literally a few moments ago. We've also heard from the Prime Minister and the Mayor of London as well.
Yeah, very similar statements from the likes of Boris Johnson, from Sadiq Khan, echoing Priti Patel's comments you heard there, and Kit Malthouse, the policing minister, called to the Commons to give that emergency statement shortly after that news broke this morning. And to be honest, Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, very similar comments in terms of the tragedy and paying tribute to officers that every day face the kinds of things that we can't necessarily imagine, and what the colleagues of this officer are having to deal with today, and obviously their family. And we have an incident playing out in Paris right now, Ian, which is a stabbing involving 4 people and a manhunt underway. We are in cities around the world. We've kind of forgotten this because of coronavirus over the last 6 months, that we are cities that are on edge because of terror attacks. We've heard the Manchester Arena bombing inquiry and some of the powerful statements over the last week, that the emergency services have to deal with that kind of mindset that we've got used to living with in recent years, when we've seen incidents at London Bridge, Westminster Bridge, in Manchester, where the threat to people on the front line is extraordinary, and how whether the authorities are doing enough to protect them and support them. And as you mentioned in your introduction, one of the things about resourcing, are we at a time when, because of everything that's been happening, that we've forgotten that these people need to have the resources? And we've heard many voices say already in the last few hours that that's an issue. And also some of the attitudes towards how they handle arrests, how they handle people in custody, and whether some of those attitudes and rules have changed too much in one direction.
David, thank you. David Spencer, Talk Radio's news editor. Let's cross live to Croydon. Alex Dibble is Talk Radio's correspondent there outside the police station. Alex, we do await more detail, of course, so that what we have at the moment is a little sketchy. Are you hearing anything that we might get more information on this throughout the course of the afternoon?
The information here, Ian, as you can imagine, the police are not releasing too much details until they have more information confirmed. On the scene here, this is a busy area of South London. You can see that behind me, flowers have been left by members of the public who have come to pay their respects. Even since I've been here, more bouquets have been left. Just a moment ago, a man came, crossed his hands on his chest and paid his condolences, gave his condolences to one of the officers standing in front of this police station. You can see also behind me that there is an area behind the fence that is believed to be an area where suspects are taken before they enter this police station here in Croydon. And one of the questions is, where exactly did this incident take place? Was it outside or was it within the building? But it was at 2:15 this morning here in this police station in Croydon where the officer was shot, we believe, as many as 5 times before he was taken to hospital and sadly passed away.
And of course, again, it's hard to preempt, Alex, any official statement that might be coming our way, but already questions about, handcuffs and searches and what would have happened or perhaps what wouldn't have happened in a case like this.
Indeed, yes. And searches have been a controversial topic of discussion in the news and in wider society in the last couple of days. And one of the things that the investigators will be trying to work out is what exactly happened when this person was initially detained before they were then taken to this police station. Were they searched at the time?
And on that point, we slightly lose the line, Alex, but I think the detail was there from Alex Dibble about that issue of what might have happened with a search, and if, as we are kind of led to believe at the moment, this was something that happened because a suspect had a gun about his person, that clearly wouldn't have come up or didn't come up on any previous search. The use of handcuffs and the like is also an interesting factor. And look, let me just say this about the police in this country. There is an armed presence in this country, but the fact that we're not an armed police service is actually the envy of most of the world. The fact that we don't have cops routinely walking around with guns. The fact that you can be arrested. I remember talking to an American friend, watching something on TV, and, a suspect was taken in the back of the police car, and she said, "Where's the handcuffs?" And it's like, well, they don't handcuff everybody. You couldn't believe that we don't handcuff everybody. But that is sort of the relationship we've had. There's been a sort of a hands-off approach. We're not a totalitarian state. We do allow for the fact that, even in times of a fraught arrest, that if handcuffs are not required, police officers make that judgment. And of course, there are times when officers pay with their lives. And today we add another name to that list of officers who have paid with their lives. I'm thinking of others. We just mentioned there, David Spencer, our news editor, mentioned PC Andrew Harper, who was dragged to his death in one of the most horrific killings that we have seen in recent years. PC Keith Palmer died after being stabbed, of course, by terrorists in Westminster. PC David Phillips, hit by a stolen truck that he was trying to stop in Merseyside. PC Philippa Reynolds, hit by a stolen car in Northern Ireland. Remember the case of PC Nicola Hughes and her colleague Fiona Bone, ambushed into a house in Manchester, killed by Dale Cregan back in 2012. PC Ian Dibble, shot in Essex. PC Sharon Beshavitsky, shot in Bradford. PC Ian Broadhurst, gunned down on Boxing Day in 2009. PC Keith Blakelock, brutally killed in North London. PC Yvonne Fletcher, on duty outside an embassy when she was shot and killed. It's a horrific list. It's a reminder, and should be a reminder to everybody listening to this, of the kind of job that we all take for granted. We pay our taxes. You see a police officer, you think of the stereotypes of the friendly cop. You think of all of the issues that police do. They attend the burglary, they attend the robbery, they put the bad guys away. But we don't tend to really think about the ultimate risk a police officer has to take. And sadly, that was played out this morning in Croydon as another one of our protectors lost their life.